So I'm Rob. I'm a senior lecturer at Leeds Arts University, but I'm also studying a part-time MA by creative practice. So my sort of specialism and background is in product design and industrial design, and the problem I want to look at is e-waste. So that's waste, electrical and electronic products. And this is a photograph I've taken. I went to my local recycling centre. This is the blue iron. That's my iron. It didn't make it. It came to the end of its life. It no longer worked. It couldn't be repaired. First and foremost, I couldn't actually get into it. So it has security screws that were triangular shaped. I do have all those kinds of tools, so I did try and get into it and have a look around, but it is, you know, that relationship with that iron is over. So it had to go to the recycling centre. But what it actually did was it sat in my garage maybe for about a few months before, you know, I went to the recycling centre. So I think you might have this kind of thing yourself. You might have something that you don't necessarily want to throw it in the black bin. You don't want to put it in the bin, but it has to be dealt with. It has to go somewhere. So there are all these thousands of products on, you know, in people's garages, in people's you know, back rooms, you know, waiting, you know, in that kind of like, you know, death row, ready to go to the next place, wherever that may be. So e-waste, or WE, which is waste, electrical, electronic products, it's the fastest growing waste stream in the world. It's growing at a steady 4% year on year. Which is quite concerning, because in the latest data I could get hold of is 2018, we had around 50 million tonnes of e-waste produced. And then as you can see of that, 38% of that is small equipment, so it's kind of small domestic appliances, like I've shown you, like my iron, like the microwave oven, that kind of thing. Large equipment is more your fridge, freezer, tumble dryer, that kind of thing, and so on. You can see temperature exchange equipment is to do with air conditioning. We don't have that much of a problem in this country, but globally it's a big issue. And then screens and small IT and lamps. So you can see there's a big split there. Only 20% of all of that waste, of that 50 million tonnes, is actually getting documented and collected and recycled properly. The other 80% is going elsewhere and then is being traded, dumped under inferior conditions. It's going to other countries often, and 4% of that is actually going in your black bin, in your household waste for landfill or incineration. So it's a stark picture. It's quite a concerning picture, and as I say, it's growing at 4% a year. So it's a really you know, growing and an emerging problem. The other thing I'd say is that we have a thing called Earth Overshoot Day, which is how much of the Earth's resources we consume every year. And at the current rate, we're actually consuming 1.75 Earths a year, and that's grown as well from the early. So if you imagine an entire year, by the time you get to the end of July, we've used up all of our Earth's resources and the capacity of the Earth to absorb the emissions that we're producing. And that has gone from late September, and it's now the middle of July. So we're actually getting worse. We're consuming more than in the year 2000. So things are really, really heading the wrong direction, and our consumption is increasing. And that's, I think, to do with our throwaway culture. There is a term, planned obsolescence, you may have heard of, which was actually introduced in the 1930s, or became well known in the 1930s by Bernard London's pamphlet. And his response to the Great Depression was to encourage products to be made obsolete. So you would buy something and then it would actually have a limited lifespan. And it's a bit of a mad idea, but he was thinking along the lines of a product would then, after so many years become obsolete, it would be illegal to continue to own that product. You would have to replace it. But that kind of thinking did pervade into the 1950s and 60s automotive industry, for example, where you could buy a new Cadillac every year. It was, refreshed and renewed every year. And that kind of take, make, and dispose model became our linear economy. And this is just a diagram showing that linear economy of how a new idea is put forward, it's developed, it's, the tooling is made, the materials are mined and produced, and the energy is consumed to produce that product, and then it's packaged and stored and shipped around the world. And then it's, put into stores, and it's has servicing and after sales. But really, that product, that item, that domestic product is, after a certain point, the manufacturers do not care. It just, its life then continues on, and they don't really have any responsibility for it. More recently, software has become an issue. Apple and Samsung have been fined millions of pounds for deliberately slowing down their phones through software updates. They maintain that it's to prolong the battery life and prolong the phone, but I suspect they were taken to court and lost. So they actually are deliberately slowing down phones and making phones harder to use, and as a consequence, people renew their phones, buy new phones. And this is happening all the time. This is happening with televisions and speakers. Sonos, the speaker manufacturer, have just been in the news recently about the way they've been limiting their speakers by bricking them. They go into if you want to get a 30% discount on a new speaker, you push it into recycle mode, and then after 30 days, it turns into a brick, and it no longer plays music, it doesn't do anything. You have to return it to their approved recycling center. And also, if you buy a new Sonos speaker and pair it with an old Sonos speaker, neither of those speakers will have updates. So software is now being used to pervade this throwaway culture and this planned obsolescence. So it's really happening currently, right now, and I want to really try and challenge that kind of thinking. So you may have heard of a circular economy. So circular design is what I want to look at, and how this can be used to design new products, new devices that are actually much more sustainable. So, for example, there are 6 strategies for circular product design to design products that are more sustainable. So designing for product attachment and trust, I'm going to talk about that further with emotionally durable design. But that's really creating products that are loved, liked, and trusted for longer. So it's something that you actually want to keep that product for longer. Designing for durability. So can you develop a product that can take wear and tear without breaking down? We know we can design that. We know we've got the technology to make products that are longer lasting. But it's commercial forces making things cheaper and more disposable and more throwaway. So, there's no incentive to actually make the products more durable. So products, generally speaking, are getting less durable. And then we've got design for standardization and compatibility. So creating products with parts that can fit together well. And we can interchange with different manufacturers and things like that. Design for ease of maintenance and repair. Obviously, can you enable it to be kept in tip-top condition? Can you, make that? Could that be designed into like a ritual maintenance that you do with your product? And then design for upgradability and adaptability is really, allowing for that sort of future expansion or modification in the future if you want to upgrade it and change it and increase that lifespan. It can kind of grow with you. And then design for dis and reassembly. So actually, when it does come, like my iron, when it does come to the end of its life, it is beyond repair. Can you ensure that things can be sorted and taken apart and put into the appropriate kind of sorted areas, so you can put all metals together and so on. So they're the kind of the principles that I'd like to kind of follow going forward with the research. So one thing that's really interesting is your average mobile phone weighs about 200 grams or thereabouts. But it actually, in actual fact, it consumes 500 kilos of the Earth's resources in its actual production. So, and of that, 78 kilos is CO2 from the production and the shipping of that item. So if you think about that, that's like a small car or a horse or something. It's a huge amount of resources that are embedded and contained in the production of that mobile phone. And the average lifespan of a mobile phone is 18 months. So actually, I'm not saying you've got to keep your phone forever, but if you extend that lifespan to 36 months, you are halving the consumption waste that's associated with all the creation of that item. And then these are just some examples of how modular design has been used, durable design for repair and upgradability. So back in 2013, there was a concept called phone blocks, and it's basically an idea for a mobile phone that's like Lego, and you can kind of customize it and choose which items or which functionalities are most important to you. So if you want to have a really good camera, you can have an upgrade camera. If you want to have a bigger battery, you can have a bigger battery. This is a really interesting concept, but it's a concept. That's kind of been taken further with Motorola and Google Advanced Technologies and Projects Group, and they had a concept phone called Project Ara, which was starting to get there. Really interesting kind of product architecture with the kind of modular chassis, as it were, and then these component parts could then be swapped off, and you could replace parts, or you could upgrade parts. Unfortunately, that's been scrapped. It could maybe come back in a different form, but it is proving very technologically complicated. The nearest thing we've got to anything like that is the Fairphone, and that's the Fairphone 3. But it is a phone that you are allowed to actually open up and repair without voiding your warranty, like you would do with an iPhone or what have you. So it is, there are some people making some steps forward, but I think a lot more needs to be done. So this is really interesting in terms of the repair, the upgradability, but the actual product attachment, forming a bond with a product and wanting to keep it for longer, is the basis for emotionally durable design. So this is a theory that's kind of been developed by Professor Jonathan Chapman. He's actually the director of doctoral studies at Carnegie Mellon University, but he was previously the professor of sustainable design at Brighton. And this is his theory, and it can be seen in some products here. So not necessarily electronic products, I'll talk about the toaster in a moment, but this gold ring is it's a gold ring that's then coated in white gold, and then as you live your life, the white gold kind of wears away, and it reveals the yellow gold, the 24-karat gold underneath, and it's that kind of lived experience of as you live with an item, as you kind of persist with the item and keep it for a long, long time. You would keep a wedding ring for a long, long time. It actually it improves with age. It takes on different characteristics, and it becomes very unique to you. The teacup at the bottom, that's called stain, and it's a teacup that's got basically glazed and unglazed areas. And as you make your tea and use that cup over time, the pattern of the glazed area and the unglazed area actually becomes stained, and then it reveals the pattern over time. So it's kind of this thing of you have to live with an item a long, long time for it to then kind of improve and change over time and improve with age. This is around. This has been around. There's this this small pot as well on the left. This is the Japanese art of kintsugi, and you can see that it's a broken pot. It's been repaired, but it's been repaired with a lacquer that's got gold powder within it, so it can actually then be polished, and it lends a new life to the object. But it also, you know, it's more beautiful. It's kind of more meaningful because it's been broken and repaired, and a lot of time and effort has gone into the repair. So it's this kind of idea that you can really live with something for a long time, but maintain that relationship with the item. The Optimist toaster by the Agency of Design. This is basically a really durable toaster that's made from cast aluminium, and it's also very easy to repair. It's very simple in its construction. And then one of the features it's got is it's got a little counter. So every single time you make a round of toast, it just adds another number onto the dial. So when you pass this down to your grandkids, they can see like how many rounds of toast you've had. So it's kind of got that kind of little bit of charm, that little bit of personality. You know, and like I say, it's called the Optimist. It's going to live forever. You know, so it's kind of got that that different aspect. It's not the, you know, the $3.99 Argos toaster that you're going to put in the bin. So it's kind of challenging those kind of consumption trends. So further work, I mean, I am only halfway through the first year of a 2-year part-time MA, so I'm trying to, at the moment, develop surveys, interviews, that kind of thing. So I really am actually looking for participants today as well, so I can show that at the end. But really, what I'm interested in is knowing, you know, what influences the significant emotional attachments in product-user interactions. So when you do have an attachment to an object, whatever that may be, especially like an electronic product as well, because I'm interested in electronics and those kinds of products, because that's a really big problem, the eWaste problem. But you know, why do you form attachments with some things, and then why do you find it so easy to throw other things away? And what's that difference? So I really want to try and drill down and find out what that is, why people form attachments, and then how can those insights help me, you know, design new conceptual electronic products that people want to keep for longer. So I'm trying to think of, you know, the outcomes from this study, this MA, will be conceptual designs for new products. There'll be a range of new concepts with the aim that you can actually want to keep them for longer and repair them and upgrade them and live with them for a long time. I also have been to, there's a really interesting thing called the Restart Project. And there's one of them in Leeds. It's called the Leeds Repair Cafe. And just the other, I think it was on the 15th of February, I went along, and they held it at the market in Leeds. And what they did is basically completely run by volunteers, and people can bring along an item that they want to have repaired. And it was just really amazing speaking to the people who were bringing items to be repaired and talking to the fixers who repair people's stuff. You know, they had all kinds of people going along. A lady had a CD player that she'd had for 20 years, and you know, it's not playing anymore. So they opened it all up inside and looked, and all it was just quite a long hair just tied around the laser, around the spool and around the laser, and they just pulled out the hair, screwed it all back together again, and put on the CD, and it just started playing again. And it's like, you know, she might keep that for another 20 years, and it's that kind of thing of how, you know, simple repairs, or, you know, but like I said, this is run by volunteers. They figure it out themselves, but there is a growing repair community. There are websites like iFixit where you can find manuals and information for how to fix things. But, you know, basic part of my recommendation, concept products I might design will actually also come with a repair manual, or they'll come with tools. It's that kind of thing of, you don't just buy the perfect finished product, you buy a whole way of maintaining it over time. So that's kind of where I'm heading. And then of the emotionally durable design, from Chapman, one of the most sort of significant papers, recent papers that have come out is this was in conjunction with Philips Lighting and the University of Brighton, and they've come up with a kind of design framework for emotionally durable design, and it's lots of different strategies to employ to actually design new products in a more sustainable way, in a more holistic way, and there's, I couldn't put this on the poster because it's just, even here it's kind of hard to see. But there are several strategies. One of them that's really interesting is one called, Labour Leads to Love. And that's also known as the IKEA effect. And basically, if you've put time and effort into building something or creating a product, you've actually put your own labour into that product. And because you've put the time and effort into making it, you've formed a kind of connection with that product. So they're the kinds of interesting kind of strategies and ways forward that I can use. So really what I'm doing next is kind of evaluating these strategies and thinking of which of these strategies I can combine together. But you can see there, things like materiality, looking for sustainable materials that age really well over time, that don't scratch and look worse, that things that actually kind of like a leather strap on a watch or something, it improves over time. So like the Optimist toaster that was cast from aluminium, it can, cast aluminium is going to, it's not going, even if it scratches, it's going to kind of, take on a nice new kind of look to it. It's not going to become, degraded. It's going to look worn, but develop a patina. So they're the kinds of things that that can be used. Like I said, there's so many that I need to go further and investigate. And then, like I say, these concept products that I'm going to develop, they are going to challenge the sort of conventional norms of kind of consumerist product design manufacture. So I've also been looking at sort of speculative critical design and how that can be used. So really, you can see here that product design remains closely aligned with the market expectations and is one of the few areas in which conceptual and commercial approaches really do not mix. That's June and Raby from Speculative Everything, and they basically say how you might be able to see really high concept stuff in fashion. You might be able to buy a really high concept piece of fashion. You might be able to see a concept car that shows a really futuristic version of a car. But what you never really see is you don't really see very often conceptual product design, domestic commercial concept products. So what I might produce might be quite challenging for industry or for the commercial forces, but that's why it could be quite critical of current norms. This is quite a famous critical piece of design by Thomas Thwaites. It's called the Toaster Project, or a heroic attempt to build a simple electric appliance from scratch. And what he did is he took a $3.99 toaster from Argos, and he said, I'm going to recreate this toaster myself. I'm going to see if I can make a toaster from scratch. So he took it apart, and he found it was made of hundreds of components, and it was infinitely complicated, but he thought, right, what are the key elements, what are the main areas? So basically you've got copper for the pins in the electric plug and the cord and the internal wires. You've got iron for the grilling apparatus and the spring to pop up the toast. You've got nickel to make the heating element, and then mica, which is kind of like a mineral that's like slate, and the mica would be the heating element, and then plastic for the plug and the casing, you know, the sleek case, which didn't quite work out. Yeah, so he went and did that, and he went and mined his own ore, and he smelted his own copper and all of that stuff. And if you look, he's put it on a shelf with some toasters, you know, in just like a Curry's or whatever. And it cost him, I think it says, like £1,187 to produce that. So it cost him over £1,000 to build that working toaster. So it does work. It does toast. But then there's a really great quote from him, and he's saying that basically he says, it seems the need to buy more stuff and save our economy, you know, like this sort of planned obsolescence idea of, you know, we need to buy more stuff to save the economy. But you know, this need to save the economy and buy more stuff, balanced with, you know, we need to buy less to save the environment, are on a collision course. So we either have to value what we've got a lot more, or spend as much time and effort taking things apart and disposing of them as we do putting them together. So yeah, it's quite a poignant thing. And like I say, you know, that is just more of a exhibition piece that's making a comment on our societal norms, but whatever I do next might be similar in the way that it's, you know, it's a critique on design as it currently stands. So what I'd like to do as well is invite you all today to participate in a survey that I'm doing. So I'd like to know about your emotional attachments, your you know, your relationships with products. So it's all centered around, if you have an item, an electrical product, it could be anything, but something that is the most kind of cherished item you own. So if you've got a really cherished product that you could never throw away, you know, it's like you could never ever get rid of it, but it's an electrical product. I'd like to know about that. I'd like to know about your relationship with it and why you are attached to it. So I think that's that would be great. So if you scan that QR code with your phone, it'll give you a link to the survey. I've also got a link to the survey next to my poster in Parkinson Court. If you want to talk to me about it, I'd appreciate that. Yeah. And just to give you, and before everybody just says, oh, I'm attached to my phone. I mean, you can all put your phone if you want to, but I'm also looking for those kind of maybe more nostalgic attachments, things like that. Or I don't know, I don't really know, that's why I'm asking. So yeah, I think mine is probably my Sega Game Gear from the early 90s. That's followed me everywhere. So could never get rid of that. So yeah, what have you got that's your emotionally attached electronic item? Yeah, and that's it really. Yeah, there's the bibliography, and that's the QR code. Thank you. Okay.
Thanks very much, Rob. That was really interesting. There's lots of things to consider. Has anybody got any questions they'd like to ask Rob? We'll pass the microphone. Yeah.
Okay, cool. It's something. The question's something about functionality and technology, because it seems by picking electronic products, you've made your job a lot harder than otherwise. So that toaster, the Optimist toaster, probably one of the reasons they picked a toaster is it's just about the most simple machine you can have, isn't it? Whereas with it's maybe sound stuff a little bit with Bluetooth connectivity, but phones especially, to make something durable, and you've got to be either change people's expectations about what they're going to get out of it, or I don't know, be able to keep up with.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's where the upgradability factor maybe comes into it. So you know, it could be you know, done in a clever way that can facilitate kind of modular parts and upgrades, but it is harder. It is a lot harder to do an electronic product. But the problem of e-waste is such a problem, and it's something that we kind of turn away from, because I think we have got this really quite consumerist society where we do want new things, nice new things, and it's quite easy to put things on a shelf, and that's why things go in the garage or in the shelf, because you don't want to throw it away straight away. And these electronic items tend to kind of gather dust before they end up in the landfill or in, you know. So it is harder. I agree that it is a harder thing to try and tackle. But I think it's something that I want to do, because I designed this watch a few years ago, and I didn't really understand what I was trying to do at the time, but it's entirely made in the UK, and it's made using sort of local engineering firms, and the only thing that's not made in the UK is the Swiss mechanical movement. The leather strap is like handmade, not by me, but by someone I've commissioned, and I think it's quite easy to make, well, not easy, but I think it's, for me to continue to do this kind of work and produce products that are more like an heirloom or more sentimental, I've done it already with the watch. So I'm kind of thinking, what's next? And that's kind of why I'm looking at electronics, because it's such an issue, it's such a growing problem that I think it needs to be tackled head on. And I think, and like I say, the products that I produce at the end of this may be quite conceptual, and they may be quite challenging, and you know, it's more about kind of opening up a discussion around our consumption trends than actually being an actual practical solution. It may be that it is a practical solution, but some of them may be more challenging than others. But I do think that I could make, you know, simpler items that are easier to form connections with. And I think the challenge is the electronics, because it's just, you know, it's so easy to dispose of them. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah.
Hi, so I actually had a Fairphone before I went back to iPhone.
Cool.
It basically just didn't work for what I needed it for. I do a lot of research with my phone, and I looked into using second-hand, so I now only buy second-hand iPhones. I then recycle them. Do you think that it would be helpful, like you said, rather than making things that are that complex, just to change people's understanding and awareness of, okay, don't buy something brand new, buy something second-hand, make sure you dispose of it like in a ethical way? So do you think that would be a more, for those kind of really complicated things, a more sort of in-depth or better way of doing it?
I think that's an excellent point. I think that's really, really valuable, and I think that you need an item to work, you need it to function, it needs to perform, and a lot of the time you can fall out of love with a product because it doesn't perform, it doesn't do what it's supposed to do. I'm the same. I've bought the Galaxy Note 9 like 2 years ago when it first came out. So the idea there being that if I buy the best phone I can afford, it's probably going to last me longer. But I didn't buy a Fairphone. And why didn't I buy a Fairphone? Yeah, it's a good point. But I want it to perform, and I want it to do all the stuff I want it to do. Yeah.
I feel like with Fairphone as well, I wanted to fund them because I knew that the more you fund stuff like that, the better their technology will get, because they'll have more money. But at the same time, like, it didn't perform, so I had to end up sending it back, which then affects them being able to make it better. But I don't know.
No, you're right. I think we've got an obsession with having the most advanced technology, and this is why, you know, making things modular and upgradable and repairable is good, but it's got to be done in such a way that it's, you know, it's simple and easy to do, and the performance could be the best. So
getting bigger companies to actually look at how they're making things rather than getting smaller companies.
Yeah, and that's where I suppose if I do these conceptual products, it's more about kind of, like I said already, about creating a conversation or an awareness because that's all I can do. You know, I'm not going to tackle Apple or whatever. So how do you do that? You know, what do you do? And it's just about doing a project and disseminating the research and sharing the impact of it, I guess. So that's that. So I do want to do something that's quite challenging that will hopefully get some acknowledgement or makes some people see that this is an issue. And again, it's like with anything, it's about screaming and shouting about it. And the more that we do that, the more impact things can have. So it's going to be years. This is my the next 10 or 20 years of my research, I guess, to try and develop something. But I do think that the communication of this and encouraging refurbished products and buying refurbished is a really great idea, and I could actually incorporate that into this. I think it's all part of the research. Yeah. Cool. Thanks.
I mentioned that a lot of my friends are just most of our mobile phones, the life cycle of our mobile phone can be only used like at a maximum for 2 years, and we really want to recycle it as just to sell it back to the company or just something else. But the issue is that if we sell it back to the Apple, back to any other companies, they just give a super low price. Yeah, that's why we still think, it's hard to do that.
It does require a top-down change. That is the real issue here, and for companies to change their practices is really hard. It's glacial. It's really slow how things change in that regard. So again, it's about kind of just creating awareness or pushing that kind of communication of it all. Because I guess after 2 years, you get a new phone, or whatever. You return it, and you get like a little bit of money for it, and you upgrade. But that is the current norm, and what I'm saying is that has to. If we all push and want change, then hopefully they will listen. Yeah,
I'm thinking that why companies do not willing to recycle it and for more cost is that for them, if they recycle it and then they need to remake it, it will cost them more to just produce a product from those other materials.
It's really time consuming and it's really expensive to disassemble a mobile phone. Apple have actually developed this robot that dismantles phones. I can't remember how many it does an hour. I think it does like about 200 an hour or something, and it's got like suction cups that take the screen off, and then it sorts all the different parts out. But it's too expensive for humans to do that.
Okay.
You can't pay humans enough money to it would just be, it's not economic. Yeah, so exactly, it's just not economic. Yeah.
Okay.
So maybe automation and robotics is the answer, or like I say, making things actually design things to be easier to dismantle from the start. Is the thing that we should be doing. Yeah.
Yes, makes sense.
Thank you. I guess just a follow on from that is that I think people also have like a lack of trust in things that aren't new.
Yeah.
Like, people think, I don't want to buy a second-hand phone because it might not work, or, what, has it got any damage that's been hidden? It's kind of like, I don't know, I think it's quite good maybe to start with small things, people to change, then build up to things like, as phones are such a big part of people's lives, it's just things like, this is more fashion rather than environment, but like going to charity shops or using second-hand clothing and then changing small things as they go, because price plays a big part, doesn't it? People just, students, moving, go to Wilco's, get their toasters, and it's just kind of a throwaway consumer behaviour.
Yeah, absolutely. So going back to the first question, maybe it's that I don't try and tackle such complicated products. Maybe I try and tackle the simpler items first, and it's maybe more to do with this idea of like making that connection and that attachment with the item, with the product first, and then once that's kind of embedded, it's like you know, you don't want to get rid of it. Yeah. So that's really the focus, I think, next. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I think it's time for lunch, so thank you very much for that. It was
No
really
worries.
interesting.
Thank you. Cheers.